a true pillar of our community. The master of ceremonies gushed from the podium, his voice echoing through the grand ballroom of the Fairmont Copley Plaza. The last time I saw that pillar, his hands were wrapped around my throat, pinning me against the wall of my childhood bedroom. My vision had blurred then, the world dissolving into a haze of his rage-contorted face and the scent of stale whiskey on his breath. Tonight, Judge Arthur Vance, my father, simply beamed under the stage lights, accepting the adulation of Boston's elite as if he were born to it. He was being honored with the Judicial Lifetime Achievement Award, a testament to a life supposedly dedicated to justice and integrity. The hypocrisy was so thick in the air it was suffocating. Seated beside me at the head VIP table, my husband, Ethan Cole, squeezed my hand. His touch was a grounding force in the storm of memories threatening to pull me under. He knew what this night meant. He knew the cost of the ticket to this gala wasn't measured in dollars, but in 22 years of silent, meticulous planning. The goal had been singular and all-consuming, securing the future of Cole Industries' new East Coast Tech campus. A $5 billion investment that had every powerful person in this room, including my father, salivating. My father saw Ethan as the key to cementing his legacy, a powerful connection that would make him untouchable. He had no idea the man he was so desperate to impress was married to the daughter he had thrown away like trash. I hope, Mr. Cole will see the value in our great city, my father had said earlier in his speech, his eyes sweeping over our table with a politician's practiced warmth. He didn't recognize me. Or if he did, he gave no sign. To him, I was just the beautiful, anonymous wife of a titan of industry. The cast-off daughter, the shameful secret, was buried deep in the past, a ghost he'd long since exorcised. Then, the host opened the floor for a brief Q&A, a sanitized affair meant to further polish my father's glowing reputation. A reporter from the Boston Globe, a woman I knew my team had carefully briefed, stood up. Judge Vance, she began, her voice crisp. Recently, the son of Congressman Davies was involved in a high-profile DUI scandal. As a man who has built his career on upholding the law and family values, what is your perspective on such failures in parenting among public figures? A smug, self-satisfied smile played on my father's lips. It was the same smile he wore just before he would deliver a particularly cruel insult, the one that always preceded the darkness. That is a tragic but simple matter, he answered, his voice resonating with false gravitas. It is the result of a catastrophic failure in parenting. Any parent whose child becomes a burden on society lacks the fundamental character of a true leader. Frankly, I would be ashamed to even look at the face of such a deeply irresponsible parent. The room murmured in agreement, and in that moment, the carefully constructed dam inside me broke. A cold calm washed over me. 22 years of pain, of humiliation, of quiet, burning rage, all sharpened to a single, perfect point. I felt a tremor of fear, a primal instinct screaming at me to stay seated, to let the ghost remain a ghost. What if this fails? What if they don't believe you for a split second? I saw myself as that 17-year-old girl again, powerless, terrified, and utterly alone. Then I felt the weight of the folder on my lap, the crisp edges of the documents inside. The proof. I thought of my brother, Leo. I thought of my son. The fear dissolved, replaced by an unyielding resolve. I rose from my chair. The rustle of my silk gown was the only sound in the suddenly silent ballroom. Perhaps you should start with a mirror, I said, my voice clear and steady, amplified by the perfect acoustics of the hall. 1,000 pairs of eyes swiveled in my direction. Then you would see the face of an irresponsible parent staring right back at you. Dad. A collective gasp swept through the audience. Cameras began to flash. their blinding lights turning the scene into a surreal tableau. My father's face, moments before a mask of judicial authority, was now drained of all color. His mouth slightly agape, his eyes, wide with shock, finally saw me. Not the CEO's wife, but the girl he had beaten and discarded. "Elara," he whispered. The name a faint, strangled sound, lost in the chaos. Next to him, his wife, my mother. Helen clutched at her pearls. Her face, a mask of horror. My sister, Chloe, seated a few tables away, looked as if she had been struck by lightning. Ethan stood up beside me, a protective presence, and took a spare microphone from a nearby technician. "Good evening, everyone." His voice boomed, commanding immediate attention. "I am Ethan Cole, CEO of Cole Industries." The frantic energy in the room instantly shifted to rapt focus. Everyone knew who he was. The billionaire investor. The man whose decision could reshape the city's economy had just taken center stage. "And this," he said, turning to me, his eyes full of love and steel, "is my wife, Elara Vance-Cole. She is also the biological daughter of Judge Arthur Vance." The ballroom erupted. The man my father had courted for months, the linchpin of his future ambitions, was married to the child he had erased from his life. It was a perfect, exquisite irony. Reporters surged forward, shouting questions. "Judge Vance, is this true, Mrs. Cole? What does she mean? What will this mean for the Cole Industries investment?" My father stood frozen, a statue of a great man crumbling from the inside out. The daughter he had sentenced to die in a gutter 22 years ago was now the woman who held his entire world in her hands. But I was no longer that scared girl. I am Elara Cole, age 39. I am the founder and CEO of Innovate Dynamics, a biotech firm with a valuation of $20 billion. I am the creator of the Phoenix Foundation, an organization that has helped over 50,000 women escape abusive situations. My foundation has an annual operating budget of $80 million and has worked directly with the White House to draft legislative reform. I have been named one of the world's most innovative leaders for 5 years running. I sit on the board of 3 Fortune 500 companies. My day begins at 4:30 a.m. in my home gym, where I train for 90 minutes before sitting down at my desk by 6:30. Managing a global team of 500 brilliant minds. Even my husband knows not to interfere in my business. I make my own decisions. Always. But 22 years ago, I was trapped in a living hell. We lived in a sprawling colonial home in a wealthy Boston suburb. My father was a respected law professor at Harvard then. My mother, a former investment banker who chaired charity boards. My sister, Chloe, was the town's golden girl, a straight-A student, captain of the cheerleading squad, and impossibly beautiful. We were the Vances, the picture-perfect family, behind the mahogany doors. However, it was a prison of psychological and physical torment, and I was its sole inmate. Look at you, Elara. Pathetic. My father would sneer across the breakfast table, his eyes filled with contempt. How could you and Chloe possibly share the same blood? My mother would chime in, her voice dripping with disdain. With your sullen face and that mediocre mind, your future is a dead end. I truly wish you'd never been born. Chloe was the most vicious. She delighted in my misery. Having you around is actually a gift. Elara, she'd say, fluffing her perfect blonde hair in the hallway mirror. Being compared to my drab, awkward little sister just makes me shine brighter. This was my daily reality. A constant barrage of insults designed to grind my soul into dust. The financial abuse was just as systematic. Chloe was given a $1,000 monthly allowance, a designer wardrobe, and private tutors for every subject. I received nothing. My clothes were from Goodwill or Chloe's cast-offs, stained and stretched. When I turned 16 and got a part-time job at a local bookstore, every penny of my paycheck was confiscated. "You will contribute to this household," my father declared, his voice cold and final. "The money you earn is not your own." That money went directly to funding Chloe's expensive ski trips and equestrian lessons. My father systematically isolated me, calling the parents of my few friends to warn them I was a troubled, corrupting influence. Eventually, everyone pulled away. I was an island. The verbal abuse often escalated. He called it discipline. He'd say, "A defiant failure like you requires a firm hand," as he backhanded me across the face for a B+ on a report card, or locked me in my room for the weekend with no food for being 5 minutes late for curfew. My mother and sister never intervened. "It's your own fault, Elara," my mother would say calmly. "You know how to provoke him." But the most unforgivable act was his deliberate campaign to sabotage my future. I was at the top of my class. Despite everything, my dream was to get a scholarship and escape to college. He made it his mission to burn that dream to the ground. "A college education is wasted on a girl like you," he announced one evening, tearing up my scholarship applications in front of me. "Your place is to get a menial job after high school and support this family," he sneered, the pieces of paper fluttering to the floor like dead leaves. "You, in a university, don't make me laugh." Using his considerable influence at Harvard, he contacted the admissions departments of the colleges I applied to, poisoning my chances with lies and slander. He ensured every door was slammed shut in my face. In that suffocating darkness, there was one sliver of light: Ethan Cole. He was a student at MIT, working part-time at a coffee shop near my bookstore job, to hide a little money from my parents. I would ask my boss to pay me a small portion of my wages in cash each week. That secret fund paid for my one escape, a single cup of coffee, nursed for hours at that cafe. He was the first person who ever looked at me and saw a person, not a disappointment. "You have the most beautiful smile," he'd said the first day we spoke. "But your eyes look like you're carrying the weight of the world." No one had ever said I was beautiful before. No one had ever looked past the sullen mask I wore for survival. Tears pricked my eyes, and for the first time in years, I let someone see the cracks in my armor. We started meeting in secret, our stolen moments becoming the only thing I lived for. He'd meet me after my shift, and we'd walk to a secluded park overlooking the Charles River. In his presence, I wasn't the Vance family's failure. I was just Elara. You felt intelligent, funny, and worthy. "You have a fire in you, Elara," he would say, his gaze intense. "One day, you're going to break out of this cage and build an empire." I shared my wildest dreams with him of starting my own company, of creating something that would help people who felt as trapped as I did. "I will help you," he promised, his voice a solemn vow. "Whatever it takes." I had no idea that vow was about to be tested in the most brutal way imaginable. That winter, when I was 17, my body began to betray me. A persistent nausea, dizzy spells, and then a missed period that sent a jolt of ice through my veins. My hands trembled as I paid for the pregnancy test at the drugstore, the cashier's indifferent gaze feeling like a judgment. In the cold, sterile bathroom of the bookstore, 2 pink lines appeared, sealing my fate. My mind, trained to survive, went into a cold, logical overdrive. Panic was a luxury I couldn't afford. My first thought was Ethan. I had to tell him, at our spot by the river, the winter air biting at our cheeks. I told him the words that would change everything. "I'm pregnant." He was silent for a long moment, his face pale with shock. I felt my heart plummet, bracing for the rejection I had been conditioned to expect my entire life. But then he looked at me, his eyes clearing with a fierce determination. "Okay," he said, his voice unwavering. "I will take full responsibility. Elara, I will protect you and our baby. I swear it." Just as the relief began to wash over me, a long, black sedan, the kind I'd only ever seen in movies, pulled up silently on the road behind us. A man in a perfectly tailored suit stepped out. "Mr. Ethan Cole," the driver said, his tone respectful but firm. "Your father requests your presence." I froze, the words echoing in my head. Driver, father, Mr. Ethan Cole. Ethan's face was filled with regret. "Elara, there's something I should have told you. My father, he's Robert Cole, the founder of Cole Industries." My world tilted on its axis. Cole Industries, a global behemoth, the man I had fallen in love with, the kind, part-time coffee shop worker, was the sole heir to one of the largest fortunes on the planet. "I just wanted something real with you," he said, his voice pleading. "Something that wasn't about my name. But that doesn't matter now. I have resources. Elara, I will use every single one of them to protect you both." The next day, armed with a fragile sliver of hope, I told my parents. I found them in the study. My father reading the Wall Street Journal. My mother arranging flowers. "Mom, Dad," I began, my voice barely a whisper. "I'm pregnant." My father's reaction was instantaneous and terrifying. He dropped his paper and launched himself out of his chair. "You filthy little whore," he roared, and his open palm cracked across my face with such force that my head snapped back, the taste of blood filling my mouth. "Pregnant at 17. You shameless, worthless disgrace." My mother rushed forward, not to defend me, but to aid in the attack. "What will people think?" "Arthur, you've ruined your father's reputation," Chloe, who had been listening from the doorway, just laughed. "A cruel." Sharp sound. I always knew it. That's so typical of Elara. Can't keep her legs closed. My father grabbed me by the arm, his fingers digging into my flesh like talons. "You will get an abortion immediately. No one will ever know about this stain you've brought upon us." I tried to plead, to explain that Ethan would take responsibility, but he was beyond reason. The next morning, my mother and Chloe dragged me to a gynecologist's office on Beacon Hill. I was a prisoner being led to an execution. The doctor, a stern-looking woman named Dr. E.Z. Albright, reviewed my medical history with a grim expression. "Given Miss Vance's history of endometriosis," she said, her tone grave, "a surgical termination carries significant risks. There is extensive scarring on her ovaries. There's a greater than 90% probability that she will be unable to conceive again after this procedure." My body went rigid. Never have children again. The words felt like a death sentence. This could very well be your one and only chance to have a child. "Doctor," Albright warned, looking directly at me. In that cold, sterile room, something inside me shifted. Aprimal. Protective instinct. I never knew I had roared to life. "I'm not having an abortion," I said, my voice shaking but firm. "I'm keeping this baby." Back home, my refusal was met with a new level of fury. When I tried to explain the medical risks, my father scoffed. "Reputation is more important than your pathetic desire to breed." After that, their abuse became a calculated campaign of destruction. First, my father called the owner of the bookstore. "My daughter Elara has become pregnant and deeply irresponsible," he said, his voice dripping with false concern. "I'm afraid she's no longer reliable. You should let her go." I was fired the next day. My tiny lifeline to the outside world was severed. Then, he began spreading rumors through their elite social circles. My youngest daughter, a terrible tragedy, got herself pregnant at 17. We don't even know who the father is. She's always been a wild, promiscuous girl. It was a lie. But no one questioned the esteemed Judge Vance. I would see his friends at the grocery store, and they would turn their carts away, whispering behind their hands. The violence at home escalated. He started beating me for any perceived slight. His rage a constant, simmering threat. They cut my meals to one a day, usually just scraps, and I grew weak, terrified for the fragile life growing inside me. My mother's words were a constant poison. You should have never been born. You have ruined this family. Clues were even worse. That thing in your stomach is probably defective. Just like you. It must be in the blood. The final blow came 3 months into my pregnancy. At breakfast, my father delivered his ultimatum, his voice devoid of all emotion. Elara, this is your final chance. Have an abortion. Or get out of this house. I met his icy gaze. I'll leave. He nodded slowly. Then never come back. You are dead to us. I will make sure you never find work in this city. You will die in the gutter where you belong. As a final, parting act of cruelty. He called my high school principal. My daughter is pregnant and has become a behavioral threat to the other students. She must be expelled. And just like that, I was stripped of my education, my family, and my future. I walked out of that house with a single, battered suitcase and $27 in my pocket. A 17-year-old pregnant girl, completely alone. But as I stood on that curb, the door slamming shut behind me, I was not broken. A cold, hard resolve settled in my soul. I would not just survive. I would succeed. I would build a life so magnificent that it would cast a shadow over their pathetic, hollow existence. I would make them regret the day they ever crossed me. I pulled out my cheap burner phone and called the only number that mattered. Ethan answered on the first ring. I'm coming to get you, he said. And without another word, he was on his way. As we drove towards the sprawling coal estate in his family's limousine, I made a silent vow. I will succeed. And one day, you will all see what I've become. The Cole family welcomed me with a warmth that was so foreign it made me weep. You are an incredibly brave young woman. Ethan's mother, Eleanor, said, her eyes kind. Robert Cole nodded in agreement. Any woman with your strength and conviction is a treasure. My son is a lucky man. But I was determined not to be a burden. While pregnant, I studied relentlessly, earning my GED with the highest honors and enrolling in online courses at MIT. I gave birth to my son, Adrian, and the moment I held him, my purpose became crystal clear. Raising him, I devoured textbooks on business, finance, and corporate law. When I turned 18, Ethan proposed, and I accepted. Not as a dependent, but as a partner. We were a team, equals, in every way that mattered. I graduated from MIT at the top of my class and immediately put my long-nurtured plan into action. With a seed investment from Ethan, who believed in my vision without reservation, I founded Innovate Dynamics. It wasn't just a company, it was a declaration of independence. By day, I was a devoted mother to my son, Adrian, determined to give him the love and security I never had. By night, after he was asleep, I was a relentless CEO, working through financial models and research papers, fueled by coffee and an unquenchable fire to succeed. Simultaneously, I used my own capital to launch the Phoenix Foundation. As its CEO, I was hands-on, overseeing every detail from securing our first downtown office to personally counseling young mothers who had been thrown away just like I had. I shared my story, not for pity, but as proof that a person's beginning did not have to define their end. The story resonated with a power that stunned me. The foundation grew exponentially, becoming a national force for change, a beacon for the lost and the broken. I became a sought-after speaker, my voice carrying weight in rooms I was once deemed unworthy to enter. Lawmakers consulted me on policy. My past pain had been forged into a weapon for good. Then, 10 years into my beautiful, stable marriage, a call from my Aunt Diane, my mother's estranged sister and the only relative who had kept in touch, shattered my world once more. "Elara, there's something your parents never told you," she said, her voice heavy with a grief that spanned decades. "You had another sibling, a baby boy, Leo. He was born without legs." Arthur and Helen were horrified. They said he was defective, an imperfection that would tarnish their name. My blood ran cold. They signed the papers and abandoned him at the hospital the day after he was born. They told the family he was stillborn. Rage, pure and incandescent, a force more powerful than any I had ever felt, erupted in me. They hadn't just discarded one child, they had discarded two. One for a perceived moral failing, the other for a physical one. Their obsession with their flawless public image was a cancer that consumed their own flesh and blood. I immediately hired the best private investigator in the country, sparing no expense. A month later, I sat across from my brother in a quiet Boston cafe. Leo Vance had been adopted by a loving couple, a music teacher and an engineer, and was now a world-renowned classical pianist. His genius universally acclaimed. He performed using a series of custom-designed prosthetics. His talent, a breathtaking testament to a spirit that refused to be broken. When our eyes met, we both saw the same ghost of a family we never had. We both wept. "So, I have a sister," he said, his voice thick with emotion. They threw us both away. "Leo," I whispered, reaching across the table to take his hand. "But look at us now. We became inseparable. Two halves of a whole, finding in each other the unconditional family love we had always been denied." A few years later, the perfect opportunity for my long-simmering revenge presented itself. My father, Judge Arthur Vance, was nominated for a prestigious seat on the U.S. Court of Appeals. His confirmation hearings were a public spectacle. "Family values are the bedrock of our great nation," he declared on television, his face a mask of sanctimonious pride. I watched him and felt a cold, predatory calm settle over me. At the same time, Cole Industries was finalizing its decision on the $5 billion tech campus, a project that would bring thousands of jobs to Boston, the city's political and judicial elite, including my father, were spirited to secure it. As such, Ethan and I were the guests of honor at the Judicial Excellence Gala where my father was to be celebrated. Our presence, a massive endorsement he openly coveted. And now, standing in that ballroom with 1,000 eyes on me, I took the microphone from Ethan. The slight tremor in my hands was the only sign of the storm raging within. "You all just heard my father speak of irresponsible parents," I said, my voice ringing with cold fury. 22 years ago, when I was 17 and pregnant, this man beat me, starved me, and threw me out of his house to die. He systematically destroyed my reputation and had me expelled from school, using his influence to ensure I had no future. I paused, letting the shock ripple through the silent crowd. But that is not his only secret. His cruelty runs deeper than you can possibly imagine. I opened the folder I had carried with me. My movements deliberate. My parents had another child. My brother, Leo, A horrified gasp rose from the assembled judges and lawyers. He was born with a physical disability. And because they were so ashamed, so obsessed with their perfect image, they abandoned him at the hospital like he was garbage. I held up a document. The camera flashes illuminated the paper. A copy projected onto the large screens behind the stage, where my father's face was now a pasty, slack-jawed mask of terror. This is a copy of the official relinquishment of parental rights document for Leo Vance. Signed by Judge Arthur Vance and Helen Vance. The evidence was irrefutable. My father tried to speak, sputtering, "This is a lie slander," but his voice was weak, drowned out by the rising clamor. "Is it?" I countered, my voice cutting through the noise. "Then perhaps you can explain this. The man you discarded is now a celebrated artist, and he is here with us tonight." "En quai?" From a side entrance, Leo entered the ballroom. He moved with a quiet, commanding grace on his state-of-the-art prosthetic legs, his handsome face a calm counterpoint to the chaos erupting around us. He walked directly onto the stage, stopping just a few feet from the man who had disowned him. He took a microphone. "I don't remember you," Leo said, his voice amplified, clear, and devastatingly calm. "But I remember the parents who loved me, the ones who taught me that my worth wasn't in my legs, but in my heart and my mind. You gave me life. It's true, but they are the ones who taught me how to live it." The hall descended into pandemonium. My father, the great Judge Vance, stood speechless, his world imploding in real time. The footage went viral within minutes. The hashtag #JudgeHypocrite was the #1 trend worldwide. His downfall was swift, brutal, and absolute. Within 24 hours, he withdrew his nomination for the Court of Appeals. The American Bar Association launched an immediate ethics investigation, and he was disbarred within a month. His name stripped from every plaque and honor roll. At 69, Arthur Vance was unemployed, unemployable, and a national disgrace. The man who lived for public admiration became an object of public scorn. 2 years later, he was diagnosed with a severe congenital heart defect, uninsured and with his assets frozen in litigation. He came to my office, a broken, wheezing man, begging for the money for life-saving surgery. "Please, Elara," he begged, tears streaming down his face. "ILD." His voice was a pathetic rasp, a ghost of the booming baritone that had once condemned me. I looked at him, feeling not hatred, but a cold, vast emptiness. I agreed. On one condition, a full, public apology on live television. The man who valued his pride above all else sat before a camera crew in a cheap local news studio, weeping as he confessed his sins to the world. It was the ultimate humiliation, a death of the ego far more profound than any physical ailment. My mother's fate was perhaps more tragic. Her entire identity was built on the opinions of her neighbors. After the scandal, those same people shunned her. The whispers, "That's Helen Vance." The woman who abandoned her disabled son followed her everywhere. She spiraled into a deep depression and paranoia, eventually suffering a complete psychotic break, during which she was found wandering the streets in her nightgown, screaming about the neighbors' judging eyes. She was institutionalized, losing the one thing she ever truly cared about: her public image. And Chloe, my perfect sister, suffered the most dramatic fall. She was forced to resign from her teaching position amidst a storm of parental protests. No other school would hire her. Hibanka husband, Peter, whose career was also torpedoed by the scandal, turned on her with venom. "Your toxic family destroyed my life," he spat during their bitter divorce. Now, at 35, the former golden child is unemployed, divorced, and living back in that decaying colonial house, working as a part-time janitor to care for our disgraced father. The beautiful princess was now a poverty-stricken caregiver, trapped in the ruins of the kingdom she once ruled. Today, my life is full. My son, Adrian, is 22 and just graduated summa cum laude from Harvard, about to join Innovate Dynamics. My daughter, Lily, is 17, a brilliant artist with a compassionate heart who volunteers at the Phoenix Foundation. Ethan and I are stronger than ever. Leo and his husband, David, and their 2 adopted children are our family. Last Sunday, we all gathered in our backyard for a barbecue. The air filled with laughter, the smell of freshly cut grass, and the sound of my children and nieces playing. In that moment of pure, simple joy, I knew what true victory was. It wasn't just in my family's downfall, but in the beautiful, loving world I had built in its place. I rose from the ashes not just to seek revenge, but to create a legacy of hope. This is my true victory. If my story has touched you, if you believe in the power of resilience and the fight for justice, please give this video a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Subscribe for more stories of survival and triumph. And let me know in the comments what you think constitutes true justice. Your voice matters. And together, we can turn pain into power.